The galaxy had been at war for more than 100 years. It was called the Silent War, not because it was peaceful, but because no one dared to speak of it anymore. It had become a background noise in the universe, endless, cold, and full of sorrow. Dozens of alien empires fought for control of dying stars and ruined worlds. The most powerful of them all was the Zorath Dominion, a vast empire that conquered systems with brutal efficiency. Their fleets of silver ships were known as storm clouds, sweeping across galaxies and leaving nothing but silence behind. The smaller races, the Lurians, the Archon, the Varine, tried to resist, but they were too weak, too divided. The Dominion always won, and now their eyes were turning toward new territory, the Sol sector, the home of humanity. Humanity stands apart. While the galaxy burned, Earth stayed quiet. Humanity had learned from history. They had seen what endless wars could do. They had built their colonies carefully, defended their borders quietly, and watched the rest of the galaxy tear itself apart. To most alien civilizations, humans were seen as young, inexperienced, and harmless, a species still climbing its way up the technological ladder. But that was only half the truth. Deep beneath the surface of Luna Base, behind encrypted walls of data and silence, the Terran Defense Command had been preparing for decades. The people of Earth knew that peace was fragile. They knew that one day someone would come knocking. And when that day came, humanity would not answer with weakness. The captain of the Invictus, Captain Elena Ward, stood on the command deck of the TSS Invictus, staring at the holographic projection of the stars. She had the calm expression of someone who had faced fear many times and learned to control it. The Invictus wasn't just another warship. It was the first Terran super battleship, the result of 100 years of quiet research, hidden projects, and dreams of survival. The ship stretched over 5 kilometers long, a floating fortress of metal, energy, and intelligence. Her hull was coated with dark reflective plating that bent light and sensors alike. Her power core was a hybrid fusion drive, human-designed but enhanced by technologies gathered from countless alien relics. Her weapon systems were unmatched. Magnetic rail cannons, plasma lances, and something even more mysterious, hidden deep within the core. To the galaxy, she didn't exist. To Earth, she was the last word in defense. To Captain Ward, she was home. A call from the void. The silence of the command deck broke when the communication officer turned toward Ward. "Captain, we've received a signal. Coalition emergency frequency." Ward's gaze sharpened. "Source?" "Valora Prime System, ma'am. The Coalition fleet is requesting immediate reinforcement. They say the Zorath have launched a full offensive." The captain walked closer, her boots echoing lightly on the deck. "How far?" 30 light-years from Terran border space." Ward paused for a moment. 30 light-years? Too close. The Dominion was getting bold. If Valora fell, the next target could easily be a Terran colony. She gave a slow, steady nod. "Patch it through." The holographic display flickered, showing a blurry image. A Coalition admiral, his scaled face pale and exhausted. Behind him, fires burned across a damaged bridge. "This is Admiral Threx of the Coalition Defense Fleet. To any allied vessel, we are under attack. Zorath warships and too many. Our lines are collapsing. If anyone can hear this..." The image distorted, then vanished into static. The bridge was silent again. Lieutenant James Rourke, the ship's tactical officer, looked at the captain. "Orders, ma'am?" Ward didn't answer right away. She walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. The Invictus had been built for this. Humanity had avoided war for generations, but they had always known it could not last forever. "Patch me through to Terran Command," she said quietly. "The order that changed everything on the other side of the solar system." The Terran Council sat in a secure chamber beneath Geneva Dome. Generals, admirals, and politicians watched the same desperate transmission. They knew what it meant. If the Zorath Dominion took Valora, there would be no stopping them before they reached human space. "Humanity has stayed out of this war for too long," one council member said. "If we help now, the Dominion will turn on us next." General Hayes, the oldest man in the room, leaned forward. "If we don't help, they'll still come. We've built the Invictus for a reason. It's time to show the galaxy that humanity won't hide forever." The council fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. Moments later, a secure signal reached the Invictus. The message was only 3 words long: "Deploy the Invictus." Into the fire. The crew moved like clockwork as the massive engines powered up. The hum of energy filled the corridors. Lights dimmed and the reactor core roared to life. Every deck officer, every engineer, every Marine, all of them knew that what they were about to do would change history. Navigation. Set course for Valora Prime. Ward ordered. Course locked. Engage the jump drive. Space outside the viewport twisted into a spiral of light. The ship vanished into the void. For 10 seconds there was nothing but silence. Then reality unfolded again, and the Invictus emerged in the middle of a burning star system, the battlefield of Valora. The sight before them was chaos. Broken ships drifted through space like shattered glass. Coalition cruisers were scattered, their formations destroyed. Hundreds of Zorath warships surrounded the planet, their plasma cannons flashing like lightning. Multiple enemy contacts detected, Rourke reported. At least 200 destroyers, 50 cruisers, and 1 dreadnought. The captain's voice was calm. And how many friendlies left? Less than 30 ships still responding. Ward exhaled slowly. Then we're just in time. The Zorath fleet had not yet noticed the human ship. Their sensors, tuned to the familiar technologies of the Coalition, couldn't recognize the Terran battleship. Ward turned to her crew. Weapons online. Target the lead Zorath cruiser. The gunnery officer's hands flew over the console. Rail cannon charged. The massive ship aligned its spine, magnetic fields humming as they prepared to fire the main weapon. A rail slug the size of a shuttle, moving at a fraction of light speed. Ward gave a single nod. Fire. The shot heard across the stars, a blinding flash erupted from the Invictus. The rail slug tore through space, crossing hundreds of kilometers in a heartbeat. It struck the Zorath cruiser dead center, and vaporized it instantly. Every sensor, every eye on the battlefield turned toward the human battleship. What was that? One alien commander shouted over comms. That energy reading, impossible. The Zorath dreadnought tried to retaliate, turning its massive cannons toward the Invictus. Plasma bolts streaked across the void, but the human ship's shield shimmered and absorbed the fire. The Invictus returned fire, and in 1 shot, 2, 3, and every time, another Zorath ship vanished. For the first time in centuries, the Zorath Dominion retreated. The remaining Coalition ships began cheering over the comms, their voices filled with disbelief. Unknown vessel, identify yourself. Captain Ward smiled faintly and answered. This is Captain Elena Ward of the Terran super battleship Invictus, representing Earth and the Terran Alliance. We are here to help. A pause. Then the voice of the Coalition admiral came back, trembling with awe. Humanity, you came. Ward looked out at the stars and said quietly, We always do. The galaxy did not know it yet, but this was the day everything changed. The silent war would never be silent again, because humanity had entered the fray. The TSS Invictus drifted in the smoking aftermath of battle. Around it floated broken ships and silent debris, the remains of what had once been the proud Coalition defense fleet. The Invictus stood like a lone guardian among ruins, its armor glowing faintly from absorbed plasma fire. Captain Elena Ward stood on the bridge, her face calm but her eyes sharp with determination. Status report, she said. Lieutenant Rourke scanned the holographic display. Minimal shield damage, no major systems offline. Rail cannon cooling cycle engaged. Enemy fleet in retreat, Captain. A quiet breath of relief passed through the crew. Humanity had faced the most feared fleet in the galaxy, and survived. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. The Zorath Dominion would not forget this day. They would regroup, they would return, and next time they would come in greater numbers. The Coalition survivors moments later, a faint signal came through. The communications officer reported, Incoming transmission from Coalition flagship, or what's left of it. Put them through, Ward ordered. The holographic display lit up, revealing Admiral Threx, the same lizard-like being who had sent the distress call earlier. His uniform was burned, his scales cracked, but his eyes glowed with gratitude. Captain Ward, he began, voice heavy with disbelief. We thought no one would answer. You saved us. Ward gave a small nod. You called for help. Humanity couldn't ignore it. Threx looked behind her at the vast Terran ship. That vessel, the power, the design, and we have never seen anything like it. What are you? Ward hesitated, then answered plainly. We are human. We stand for our people and for those who stand beside us. For a moment, the Admiral was silent. Then, with visible respect, he bowed his head. Then humanity has earned the gratitude of the Coalition. The message across the stars word of the battle spread faster than light. Every communication network, every intelligence channel in the galaxy echoed with the same rumor. A new power had entered the war. Across star systems, commanders and soldiers whispered in disbelief. The humans, the species everyone thought was quiet and harmless, had unleashed a warship that could destroy a Zorath dreadnought in a single shot. The Zorath Dominion's High Council met in their grand crystal chamber on the world of SciFi-Prime. Holograms of their military leaders flickered around the room. "This cannot be true," hissed Supreme Commander Kareth, his voice sharp and cold. "No new species could build a ship to rival ours." "It is confirmed," replied another. "The vessel's energy readings were unlike anything in our database. The Coalition calls it the Invictus." The Supreme Commander's claws tapped against the table. "Then we will destroy it. No one defies the Dominion and lives." He turned toward the glowing map of the Valora sector. "Mobilize the Second Armada. Find that ship. Crush it before it becomes a symbol." Preparation. Aboard the Invictus on the Invictus, repairs were already underway. Engineers replaced burned armor plates while drones drifted outside, patching the ship's hull. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly. Though they had won, they all knew what was coming next. Lieutenant Rourke approached Captain Ward on the command deck. "Admiral Threck says their survivors are regrouping at the Valora moon base. He requests our assistance in evacuation and defense." Ward nodded. "We'll help. Begin coordinating with their command ships. Send med teams to their wounded." Rourke hesitated, then asked, "Do you think Command will approve us getting this involved, ma'am? This isn't just defense anymore." Ward gave him a calm smile. "Humanity doesn't turn away from those who ask for help, Lieutenant. We're not here to conquer. We're here to show what it means to stand for something." Her words spread quietly through the crew. Every soldier, every officer felt a sense of pride. They were part of something bigger than any one nation or planet. The Invictus wasn't just a ship. It was the heart of human courage. The calm, before the storm for 3 days, the Invictus and the remaining Coalition ships worked to secure the Valora system. Coalition engineers were astonished by the Terran ship's efficiency. Its drones repaired damage in minutes that would take others days. Its reactors produced energy that could power an entire city. Some aliens feared it, others admired it, but all respected it. At night, Captain Ward would stand at the observation deck looking down at the glowing surface of Valora Prime. It was a wounded world, its skies still burning. She wondered how many more worlds had suffered the same fate under Zorath control. She knew humanity's isolation was over. They had stepped into a wider galaxy, one full of danger but also opportunity. Then on the 4th day, sensors began to flash red. "Captain." The sensor officer shouted. "Multiple hyperspace signatures inbound." "Large fleet, a very large fleet." Ward turned sharply. "How many?" "Over 500 ships, ma'am. Zorath design." The bridge fell silent. The Zorath had come for revenge. The Second Battle of Valora. The darkness of space exploded into color as the Zorath Armada arrived. Hundreds of silver ships emerged from hyperspace, spreading out like a metallic storm. Their lead vessel, the Harbinger of Zykar, was nearly as large as the Invictus itself. "Contact the Coalition fleet," Ward ordered. "Tell them to form a defensive perimeter around Valora base." The ship shook slightly as power surged through its systems. "Weapons online. All hands to battle stations." The Invictus moved forward, its engines glowing like twin suns. On the bridge, the crew was silent or focused, steady, ready. "Enemy fleet forming up, Captain," Rourke reported. "They're coming straight for us." Ward's expression hardened. "Then we meet them head-on." The clash, the first wave of Zorath destroyers came fast, firing plasma volleys that painted the void in streaks of blue and white. The Invictus returned fire with precision. Rail slugs cut through enemy shields like knives through paper. 1, 2, 3 ships exploded, but for every one destroyed, 10 more appeared. "Concentrate fire on the left flank," Ward commanded. "Keep their formation broken." Coalition frigates fought beside the humans, inspired by their courage. Even damaged, they refused to retreat. Together they created a shield wall, protecting Valora's last base from destruction. But then a massive shadow filled the view screen. The Harbinger of Zycar had entered range, its main cannons charged, glowing like a rising star. "Brace for impact," Rourke shouted. A wave of energy slammed into the Invictus. The ship's shields flared bright white. Consoles flickered, alarms rang, but the hull held firm. Ward gripped the edge of her console. "Return fire. Target their main reactor." The Invictus's core railgun charged. A low hum that grew into a roar. The energy built until the ship itself seemed to vibrate. "Fire!" A brilliant beam shot forth, striking the Harbinger squarely in its midsection. The explosion that followed was silent but beautiful, a burst of silver fragments scattering like stardust. Cheers filled the bridge. "Direct hit, ma'am." "Enemy flagship destroyed." Ward allowed herself a rare smile. "Good work, everyone. But don't relax, and they're not done yet." The turning point, the Zorath fleet began to falter. Without their command ship, their coordination collapsed. Coalition vessels pushed forward, and for the first time alien voices cheered the name human. Ward watched the sensor readings. One by one, enemy signals blinked out as ships retreated into hyperspace. "They're running," Rourke said, disbelief in his voice. Ward looked out at the receding fleet. "Not running, regrouping, they'll come back." She turned toward her crew. "But today we showed them what humanity stands for. Today they learned that Earth is not afraid." After the fire, when the battle ended, the Valora system was quiet again. Coalition medics and Terran teams worked side by side, rescuing survivors and repairing ships. Everywhere she walked, Captain Ward was greeted with gratitude. To many of the aliens, she became a symbol, proof that even in the darkest times, courage still existed. On the final day of repairs, Admiral Threx visited the Invictus. Standing on her bridge, he said, "Captain Ward, your people have done more than save Valora. You've given us hope." "The Dominion can be defeated," Ward replied softly. "Hope is humanity's oldest weapon, Admiral. It always finds a way." As the Coalition fleet prepared to depart, the Invictus remained in orbit, watching over Valora's rebirth. The galaxy had changed, forever, across thousands of systems. One phrase began to spread like fire through the stars. The galaxy trembled when humanity's battleship entered the fray. And for the first time in a century, the silent war began to sound like victory. The stars were quiet again, but only for a short time. The Battle of Valora had ended, and the Invictus now floated in the calm shadow of a ruined moon. All around her, smaller ships moved like insects, repairing, scanning, rebuilding. Inside the Terran battleship, the mood was mixed. There was pride for the victory, but also fear for what came next. The crew knew that the Zorath Dominion was not finished. The enemy was powerful, ancient, and proud. They would never accept defeat from a younger race. Captain Elena Ward stood at the main viewport watching the distant light of the Valora sun. Her reflection showed the look of a leader who understood that peace never lasted long. Lieutenant Rourke entered quietly, holding a datapad. "Captain, communication from Terran Command just arrived," he said. Ward turned to him. "Go ahead." He nodded and read. "Message is classified Priority 1. Eyes-only authorization for the Invictus captain." Ward frowned. Priority 1 meant something serious. "Transfer it to my office," she said. The secret message. Her office was quiet and dimly lit. She sat behind the black glass desk as the holographic display flickered to life. The symbol of the Terran Defense Council appeared, followed by the calm voice of Admiral Hayes. "Captain Ward," the old man began, "you have done what no other fleet has managed in 100 years. You turned the Zorath back. You've made humanity known. But the time for isolation is over." The image shifted, showing strange datagraphs, blueprints, and encrypted coordinates. "You are hereby authorized to initiate the Invictus Protocol," the Admiral continued. "You will reveal humanity's true strategic strength to the Coalition, share limited technology, form alliances, and prepare for large-scale defense operations. The Zorath will strike again, and next time, they will come for Earth itself." Ward leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The Invictus Protocol. It was a name she had only heard whispered in secret briefings. A plan designed for one purpose: to unite humanity and their allies under one command if the galaxy ever threatened their existence. She whispered softly, "So it begins." A new alliance later that day, a fleet of coalition ships gathered near the Invictus. Their hulls bore the marks of battle, scorched, patched, and proud. Admiral Threx arrived aboard the Terran flagship, escorted by his guard. His scaled features softened as he looked around the massive human vessel. "Every time I see this ship, I feel smaller," he said with a hint of humor. Ward smiled faintly. "Don't. You fought bravely. Without your fleet, we would have lost Valora." Threx bowed slightly. "You've given us more than victory, Captain. You've given us a reason to hope again, but the Dominion is not finished. They will return." Ward nodded. "I know. And that's why I've been authorized to start something new. Humanity is opening its hand, not to command, but to cooperate. Together, we'll form a united defense, humans and coalition alike." Threx's eyes widened slightly. "You would share your technology?" "To a point," Ward said carefully. "Not everything, but enough to make a difference." The alien admiral studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Then perhaps, Captain, this war has finally found its leaders." The power of Unity Days turned into weeks. Around Valora Prime, shipyards began to glow once again. Human engineers worked side by side with alien technicians, combining knowledge and resources. The Invictus became a command center, a symbol of unity among species that had once distrusted each other. Terran drones repaired Archon vessels. Vereen scientists studied human energy shields. The Lurian navigators shared their ancient star maps. Slowly, hope began to return to the galaxy. Lieutenant Rourke walked through one of the ship's hangars, now filled with engineers from 5 different worlds. He smiled as he watched them talking in a mix of languages, translating through small voice devices. He turned to Chief Engineer Silva. "You ever think you'd see the day aliens and humans would share a workshop?" Silva chuckled. "Never thought I'd see the day aliens asked us how to build a ship." Both laughed softly, but beneath the laughter, they all knew what drove them. Survival. The Zorath Dominion would come again, and when they did, the galaxy had to be ready. The Dominion's anger far away, in the cold heart of the Dominion, capital, Supreme Commander Kareth stood before a giant holographic map. His golden armor reflected the harsh light as he watched the Valora sector flash red, marked as lost. An aide bowed low. "My lord, the reports confirm it. The humans have formed an alliance with the coalition. Their flagship remains active." Kareth's expression hardened. "Then the rumors are true. A single human ship destroyed one of our dreadnoughts. How?" The aide hesitated. We do not yet understand their technology. Their energy readings are strange, unstable, unpredictable. It is almost as if their ship learns from each battle." Kareth's eyes narrowed. "Then we will learn faster, send our spies, study their systems, and prepare the Vortex Armada. If humanity wants to play at war, we will show them what true war looks like." He turned toward the star map and pointed at Sol, the human home system. "Begin preparations. I want Earth on fire." The shadows of war back on the Invictus, the crew had no idea that the Dominion's eyes were already watching. Small, invisible, probes drifted through space, scanning the Terran ship's systems. Inside the intelligence room, Specialist Yara noticed something strange. "Captain, I've detected unknown signals near the outer perimeter," she said. "They're not coalition, could be Dominion scouts." Ward's jaw tightened. "Stealth probes?" "Most likely." "They're studying us." Ward nodded. "Destroy them. No survivors, no transmissions." Moments later, the Invictus's defense turrets came to life, firing precision bursts that vaporized the hidden probes before they could escape. Ward turned to her officers. "They're watching us. That means they're planning something big. We don't wait for them to attack. We prepare first." Rourke asked, "Permission to contact coalition fleets and coordinate patrol routes?" "Granted," Ward said. "And send a message to Terran Command. The storm is coming." The heart of the Invictus that night, Ward walked alone through the lower decks of the ship. The soft hum of the engines echoed through the metal corridors. She reached the reactor chamber, the beating heart of the Invictus. The core glowed like a star suspended in a magnetic field. Around it pulsed streams of blue energy. Chief Engineer Silva stood by the control console. "Couldn't sleep either, Captain?" he asked. Ward smiled faintly. "No, just thinking." Silva nodded toward the core. "You know, when we built her, we didn't realize how alive she'd feel. The way the systems adapt, react. It's almost like she's thinking with us." Ward looked at the glowing light. "She's more than metal and energy. She carries the best of us. Human creativity, courage, and stubbornness. Maybe that's why she keeps winning." They stood in silence for a moment, the soft hum surrounding them like a heartbeat. The protocol revealed. The next morning, Captain Ward gathered her senior officers in the war room. The holographic table lit up with star maps showing the spread of the Dominion's forces. "The Invictus protocol is now fully active," she began. "Our orders are to lead a united defense fleet. The coalition has agreed to place their remaining ships under joint command." A murmur of surprise ran through the officers. Rourke spoke first. "You mean we're in charge of the entire coalition fleet?" Ward nodded. "Not in charge, leading together. Humanity is no longer alone, and neither are they." She zoomed the map to show multiple red zones. "We'll form defensive positions along these sectors. Every ship, every captain, every species will stand side by side. The Dominion wants fear. We'll give them unity." Her words filled the room with strength. For the first time in many lives, everyone believed they could truly win. The human message that evening, a message was broadcast across the galaxy. It came from the Invictus. A simple, clear transmission sent in hundreds of languages. "This is Captain Elena Ward of the Terran super battleship Invictus. To all who hear this, humanity stands with you. The Dominion may have ruled through fear, but fear ends today. Together we will fight for our worlds, our homes, and our freedom. Humanity will not hide. Humanity will not fall." The message echoed from world to world. Across space, aliens listened in silence, some in disbelief, some in tears. For the first time in a century, someone spoke not of survival, but of hope, the calm before the fire. When the transmission ended, the Invictus floated in silence. On the bridge, the crew stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an enemy was preparing to strike. But so were they. Ward placed her hand on the command console. "The Invictus protocol has begun," she said quietly. "Now the galaxy will see what humanity can truly do." Far away, the Zorath fleets gathered, their engines lighting up the darkness like a storm about to break. The next war would decide everything. And as the stars flickered, one truth echoed through the galaxy. When the Invictus moves, the universe listens. The Zorath Dominion had never tasted defeat like this before. Their pride, built over centuries of conquest, had been cracked by a single Terran battleship, TSS Invictus. The name itself had spread through every communication channel in the galaxy. Entire fleets whispered about the humans, who had arrived from a distant corner of space and turned the tide of an impossible war. But the Dominion was not ready to surrender. They wanted revenge. In the command chamber of the Zorath High Council, blue flames flickered in crystal lamps as their leaders gathered. The Supreme Commander, Vrax Tor, glared at the holomap of Valora Prime, now shining with Terran and Coalition forces. His clawed hand clenched tightly as he hissed, "One human ship has shamed the Dominion. One ship. I will not rest until their world burns." His generals remained silent. They knew that the Dominion's pride had been wounded deeper than any weapon could pierce. But challenging the Invictus again was dangerous. Its power was beyond anything they understood. Yet pride often spoke louder than reason. "Gather every fleet," Vrax ordered. "We will crush them in a storm they cannot survive." Far across the void on the bridge of the Invictus, Captain Elena Ward stood before the main viewport, watching the stars drift by. Her expression was calm, but her mind was alert. Every crew member on board knew the war was not over. The Dominion would strike again, harder, stronger, and without mercy. Commander Ravi Chen, her second-in-command, approached. "Ma'am, long-range sensors detect unusual movements in multiple Zorath sectors. Their fleets are regrouping." Elena nodded slowly. "They're coming. We broke their pride, now they want to erase the memory of defeat." Ravi crossed his arms. "If they attack, it won't be like last time. This will be their full force." The captain turned to her crew and spoke clearly. "Then we'll give them our full strength. Humanity doesn't run." The bridge crew nodded, determination burning in their eyes. They had fought side by side with alien allies, defended worlds that had once ignored humanity, and now stood at the center of the galaxy's largest conflict. The Invictus was no longer just a Terran ship. It had become a symbol of resistance. Days later, Coalition intelligence confirmed the worst. The Dominion's entire armada, thousands of ships, was gathering near the Valora system. Their goal was clear: destroy the Invictus and erase the Coalition in one final strike. Admiral Corin Vell, a reptilian strategist from the Varnak species, appeared on the holographic screen. His scales shimmered with tension. "Captain Ward, my fleets are ready to fight beside you, but their numbers are overwhelming. Even if we unite, we may not survive." Elena looked calm as ever. "Admiral, survival isn't the point. If we fall standing. But if we win, the galaxy will never fear the Dominion again." The alien nodded slowly. "Then we fight." As the Zorath fleet entered Valora space, the stars vanished behind their massive ships. The void itself seemed to darken. Thousands of plasma engines burned like suns. It was the largest military force ever seen, and they were coming for one target: the Invictus. Inside the Terran ship, alarms sounded. Crews rushed to battle stations. The reactor core thrummed with power. Weapon bays opened along the hull, revealing rows of rail cannons and plasma turrets. Drones flew from the hangars, forming protective swarms around the ship. Elena took her seat on the command chair. "Target leading ships. Fire at will." The first railgun shot fired, a single streak of light that crossed space in seconds and tore through a Zorath cruiser. Then another. And another. The Invictus moved like a living creature, weaving through enemy fire, each shot precise and devastating. But the enemy's numbers were endless. Zorath dreadnoughts surrounded the Coalition fleet, unleashing torrents of plasma and missiles. Entire planets trembled under the battle's energy. Ships exploded in waves of light and debris. It was chaos, beautiful and terrifying. Commander Ravi shouted over the noise. "Shields at 60%. Starboard batteries overheating." "Cool them manually," Elena ordered. "Keep firing." The ship shuddered under impact. Sparks burst from consoles, but the crew didn't panic. They had trained for this. Every human on board knew what was at stake. Amid the chaos, Elena's eyes caught something unusual on her screen. "That's it," she whispered. "The enemy's command vessel. The Obsidian Crown." The Obsidian Crown was massive, 10 times the size of any ship in the fleet, covered in black armor and pulsing energy lines. It was the Dominion's pride and their command hub. If it fell, the entire Zorath fleet would lose coordination. Ravi followed her gaze. "You're not thinking of—" "Yes," she said firmly. "We go for the crown. Ma'am, it's surrounded by over 100 escorts." She turned toward him, her voice steady. "Then we'll break through 100. Elena opened a wide band channel to all Coalition ships. "This is Captain Ward of the Invictus. We're striking the enemy flagship. Hold the line. Protect each other. If you see us fall, don't stop fighting. Humanity will never surrender, and neither should you." The response came in from every race: Varnak, Tural, Solari, and more. "We stand with you, Captain." The Invictus accelerated, engines flaring blue. It charged through enemy lines like a meteor, ripping through cruisers with point-blank railgun shots. Missiles streaked across the sky, countered by automated defense turrets. The ship took heavy hits, but it didn't stop. Coalition fleets followed behind, inspired by the human crew's courage. Aliens who once distrusted humanity now cheered their name. Together, they pushed through the impossible. Finally, the Invictus reached the Obsidian Crown. The massive Zorath flagship loomed ahead, its black hull glowing with crimson energy. It opened fire, a massive plasma beam that struck the Invictus directly. The ship groaned, lights flickering. The crew was thrown against their seats. "Damage report," Elena shouted. "Hull breach on deck 5. Shields at 20%, Ravi replied. Elena clenched her fists. Power all weapons to the main rail cannon. Target their core. Ma'am, that much energy could overload. Do it, she said firmly. Now. The reactor hummed louder and louder, glowing white-hot. Every system in the ship focused on one purpose. One shot. Through the shattered window, Elena could see the obsidian crown powering another attack. She whispered softly, "For Earth. For the Coalition." The Invictus fired. The railgun blast wasn't light. It was a sun. It tore through space, hitting the Zorath flagship straight through the center. The obsidian crown exploded in a blinding storm of fire and debris. The shock waves spread across the battlefield, shaking every ship nearby. When the light faded, silence followed. The Dominion fleet faltered. Their command structure was gone. Ships began to drift aimlessly, confused and leaderless. Coalition ships pushed forward, seizing the moment. Within hours, the once invincible Zorath armada was in full retreat. On the bridge of the Invictus, the crew cheered. Tears and laughter mixed as the realization sank in. They had done the impossible. Ravi turned to Elena, smiling wearily. "You did it, Captain. The Dominion is finished." Elena looked at the stars through the cracked viewport. "We did it," she said softly. "All of us." The Invictus was heavily damaged, its hull scorched, engines failing, but it still stood. It was the symbol of everything humanity represented: courage, unity, and the refusal to yield. As the Coalition fleet secured the system, communications lit up with messages of hope. Species who had once been enemies now spoke with admiration for humanity. They had proven that strength wasn't about size or technology. It was about spirit. Far away in the ruins of his command station, Supreme Commander Vrax watched the last transmissions of his fleet disappearing into static. His empire had fallen. "Humans," he muttered in disbelief. How did they rise so fast? No one answered. The galaxy had changed forever. On the Invictus, Captain Ward stood before her crew, voice calm but proud. "The war isn't over until peace is secured. But today we showed the galaxy what it means to be human. Remember this, and we don't fight to conquer. We fight to protect." Her words echoed through the silent bridge. Outside, the stars shimmered once more, no longer distant but full of new possibilities. The battle was over. The stars above Valora Prime were quiet again, their light soft and distant. Where once thousands of ships had clashed in chaos, now only drifting debris and silent wrecks remained. The Zorath Dominion, the most feared power in the galaxy, had been broken. And at the heart of it all, the TSS Invictus floated in orbit, scarred but unbowed. Its hull was blackened from plasma burns. Entire sections of the ship had been melted or torn apart, yet the lights on its bridge still shone, a small, steady reminder that humanity had survived. Captain Elena Ward stood before the shattered viewport, looking out at the field of stars. Her uniform was torn, her hair streaked with ash, but her eyes were calm and bright. Around her, the bridge crew worked in silence, repairing systems, sending rescue drones, and guiding damaged Coalition ships to safety. The war had ended, but none of them truly felt it yet. The air still carried the weight of loss, of exhaustion, and of awe. Commander Ravi Chen walked up beside her. "Ma'am, the Dominion fleet has scattered. Their last transmission confirms retreat orders across all sectors." Elena nodded slowly. "Then it's finally over." He smiled faintly. "It's hard to believe. A single Terran ship facing thousands, and we won." Her voice was quiet but firm. "We didn't win alone. Every species that stood with us, they made this victory possible. We only gave them something to believe in." Hours later, the Coalition leaders gathered in a temporary war council aboard the Invictus. Holographic figures filled the chamber, admirals, generals, and envoys from a dozen worlds. For the first time in decades, their tones were not filled with fear, but with hope. Admiral Corin Vell of the Varnak spoke first. His reptilian eyes flickered with respect. "Captain Ward, the Coalition owes you and your people a debt beyond words. Without the Invictus, this galaxy would have fallen to darkness." Elena shook her head. "Humanity didn't fight for debt, Admiral. We fought because the war would have reached us sooner or later. We fought because peace matters." A Tural diplomat, her blue skin shimmering like glass, spoke softly. "And now that peace is within reach, what will humanity do?" Elena looked around the council, her expression thoughtful. "We rebuild, together." The room fell silent. It was a simple statement. yet it carried a weight that reached every corner of the galaxy. Within weeks, news spread far beyond Valora. The once divided races began to work together again. The coalition of worlds, once on the edge of collapse, became stronger than ever, not out of fear, but out of respect for what unity had achieved. Terran engineers helped repair damaged colonies. Human doctors treated the wounded of every species. Soldiers who once fought alone now trained side by side. For the first time, the galaxy saw cooperation not as weakness, but as strength. The Invictus became a symbol of that hope. Though still damaged, it was kept in orbit over Valora Prime, a living monument to the courage that had saved billions. Pilgrims from across the stars came to see it, to touch the ship's armor. To whisper stories of the day, humanity stood against an empire and won. Even the youngest alien children began to speak a new word with pride. Terran. Back on Earth, the reaction was beyond imagination. Every city, every colony, every moon base celebrated the return of the Invictus. Parades filled the streets. Flags of blue and white fluttered across continents. The images of Captain Ward and her crew became legends overnight. But to Elena, none of it felt like glory. When she finally returned home, stepping onto the soil of Earth again, she felt only quiet gratitude. The air smelled of rain and sea salt. The people who cheered her name had no idea how close they'd come to losing everything. Ravi met her on the landing platform, smiling tiredly. "Feels strange to be back, doesn't it?" Elena nodded. "Strange and peaceful. Maybe too peaceful." He laughed softly. "You think there's another fight coming?" "There's always another fight," she said, her gaze lifting to the stars. "But next time we won't be alone." Months passed. The Zorath Dominion, now fractured and leaderless, signed a peace treaty with the Coalition. They withdrew their forces from captured worlds and promised to rebuild what they had destroyed. Some still distrusted the humans, whispering that Earth might one day become a new empire, but most saw the truth. Humanity had no desire to rule. They wanted balance. Under the leadership of the Coalition Council, a new organization was born, the Terran Conquered. It was not an empire nor a government, but a promise, a united defense force for all who sought peace. The Invictus became its flagship. Captain Elena Ward was offered a high rank, Grand Admiral of the Conquered Fleet, but she refused. "I'm a soldier," she said simply, "not a politician." Instead, she returned to her ship, now restored and stronger than ever. The new Invictus II was fitted with hybrid technology, part Terran, part alien, representing the unity forged through war. Its hull gleamed silver and blue, and at its heart pulsed the same message humanity had carried from the beginning: stand together, or fall apart. One evening, as the ship orbited a quiet world, Elena walked along the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before her, beautiful, infinite, and peaceful at last. Ravi joined her, carrying 2 steaming cups of synth coffee. "We've come a long way," he said, handing her one. She smiled. "From being unknown explorers to galactic defenders. Not bad for a young species," he chuckled. "Do you think the galaxy will ever stop underestimating us?" She looked out at the horizon of stars. "Maybe, but I hope they don't. Humanity's strength comes from being underestimated. It pushes us to prove what we're capable of." They stood in silence for a while, watching the quiet expanse. Distant nebulae glowed softly like the embers of the battles they'd survived. "Do you ever think about those we lost?" Ravi asked quietly. "Every day," Elena replied. "But I also think about what they gave us. A chance to live, to build something better." He nodded, eyes misty. "Then we'll make sure their sacrifice wasn't wasted." Later that night, the ship's AI, Aurora, activated a soft light across the bridge. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Coalition Council." On screen, Elena said, the hologram flickered to life, the image of a young alien ambassador. "Captain Ward, we have reports of a new distress signal beyond the galactic rim. Unknown origin. The Council requests your investigation." Elena exchanged a glance with Ravi. "So it begins again," she murmured. "Should I prepare the crew?" he asked. "Yes," she said, a faint smile forming. "Tell them we're going exploring again. Humanity didn't rise to hide behind borders. We rise to face the unknown." As the Invictus II powered up, its engines glowed like the birth of a new star. Across the galaxy, countless ships saluted in honor, human and alien alike. The conquered fleet moved as one, a symbol of peace forged through courage. From distant systems, millions watched the broadcast. Children pointed at the shining battleship and whispered the story that had already become legend. Once the galaxy trembled when humanity entered the war. Now it stands tall because humanity chose peace. As the Invictus II jumped into hyperspace, a quiet hum filled the bridge. Elena leaned back in her chair, eyes focused ahead. "Set course for the outer rim," she ordered. "Let's see what's waiting beyond the stars," Ravi grinned. "Aye, Captain." The stars stretched into lines as the ship vanished into the void, not as a weapon of war, but as a guardian of peace. Behind it, the galaxy shone brighter than ever, united and alive. For the first time in history, every race looked to the future with hope, and at the center of it all stood humanity, small in number but vast in spirit.